Now we'll just continue to build out some of the details for our form. I am going to include several more input fields that we want to collect from our user. So these are going to be very similar to the first name input field. I'm going to collect a last name input field. This again is going to use the text type, and we'll use all the same parameters. And then we'll also use a input field to collect an email address. And again, it's using all the same parameters. You can see the only things that are different here is I've set the type to email. And by doing this, this again is an HTML5 feature, but when the browser checks to see that this is a required field, it will be looking for an email address as opposed to just any text that might be entered onto the screen. So if we save our page and check it out in the browser, you can see that I have some more fields here. Now, because we have the placeholder text, we can kind of get an idea of what these fields are asking us to enter, but without the placeholder text, this would be completely confusing. We wouldn't know what to place inside of the input fields. Usually when you create a form, you will pair up your input fields and other fields for that matter with labels. This is a much better way to create a form. The label element is a container tag that associates a text description with a form control. So let's augment our form so that we can include the labels. Labels are also recommended because they will be really helpful to visually challenged individuals who might be using assistive technology such as a screen reader to match up the text descriptions on forms with the corresponding form controls. And it can also benefit individuals who may have difficulty with fine motor control. Clicking anywhere on either a form control or its associated text label is going to set the cursor focus to the form control. So there's really no reason why you wouldn't want to include label fields, since they do help with accessibility and they'll just make our form look better anyways. To create a label field, you're simply going to open up a label tag, and the label tag can take certain attributes. One of the attributes that we'll pass on is going to be the for attribute. So we're going to set for, and when we set the for attribute, we make the value equal to the value of the name field of the associated input field. And what this does is it associates the label with a particular form element. So it's important that you're using the correct for value here. This is a really flexible way of creating your form because it does not require the text label and the form control to actually be adjacent. So depending on how you're setting up the page, you might have those things not actually be touching, but because the for attribute is going to match the value that you assigned with the name value, these things now have a relationship. Usually though, the label will travel along with the input field, but there might be a situation where you don't specify that. And then inside the actual label tags, I'm going to put whatever it is that I want to display on my page. So in this case, we're going to write first name. So if I save this and we refresh in the browser, you're now going to see that there's some text that precedes my input field. So this is identifying, oh yeah, I need to put the first name here. So usually we include these things within our form. So I'm just going to go through my form and I'm going to assign labels to the other input fields that I have. So the second input field is going to have a label of last name that's going to be associated, and notice that I'm matching the for value with the name value. And then this one right here is going to have a for value of email, and then that is going to match the name value here. So if we save and we look in the browser, each of my input fields is now going to have a label that precedes the actual input field. Now, the formatting of my form is not looking very great, and of course that is something that we're going to have to clean up with our CSS. We'll do that once we've completed our form build out. Another technique that you might want to include when you build a form is to insert a field set and a legend. This can help you to create a more visually pleasing form. It helps you to group elements of similar purpose together, and you do that by using the field set element. That's going to cause the browser to render some sort of visual clue, usually it's an outline or a border, around form elements that are grouped together within the field set. The field set tag is going to denote the beginning of the grouping, and then the closing field set tag is going to denote the end of the grouping. So let's go ahead and create a field set tag that is going to surround this section of our form. So preceding what I have on my page so far, I'm going to set a field set, and then these are all going to be grouped within this specific field set. So after the email address down here, I'm going to close my field set. So the field set is surrounding the first name, the last name, and the email address. And then usually when you create a field set, you will have a legend element that appears as well, although it is not required. You don't have to put the legend element. The legend element is simply going to provide a text description for the field set grouping, and the beginning of the tag is going to denote the beginning of the text description, and the closing tag is going to denote the end of the text description. For ours, we're just going to put sponsor details. So if I save this now and we go back into the browser, you can see that our form looks a little bit different. We now have this box that surrounds the form elements that are included inside of the field set, and we have this legend right here that says sponsor details. Now once again, the formatting is not great, but all of these things can be styled with CSS, so once we've completed building the form, we'll clean this up quite a bit by making some CSS.